Gentlemen, are we live? Ladies and gentlemen, are we live once again? Yes, we are live once again, as if by magic. This is your somewhat savvy, politically minded host, Abby Kaufman, and coming to you live and in color from his secret, undisclosed location on Newport Harbor in Newport Beach, California. And I hope everybody's having a decent Thursday. I might even be a thirsty Thursday. Who knows? I always kind of like to take a little assessment of where we are in the week. And Thursday's, Thursday's, or what do they call it? Sometimes it's just like Friday Eve. And I have no idea why I'm so looking forward to this. Hopefully, I can make a few like canvassing events and do what I can to help somebody out. And we hope that everybody is inclined to do the same. It's always good to kind of a good idea to meet the candidates and canvass and walk the neighborhoods with them. And you need to spend enough time to to know the person if you take representation seriously. And I think that everybody, each one of us, takes representation seriously these days, considering what we have to deal with in the way of leadership, such as it may. And before we get started today, one thing I really want to say, and this really does, I don't know if this gets said enough, but the integrity of candidates on the local level is unbelievable. I mean, I chatted yesterday with a fellow named Chris Duncan, and Chris is running for state senate from District 36, and District 36 goes all the way from San Clemente on out to like Cerritos and oh, what's that place with the Catella Deli? Los Alamitos, Los Al, and all that. And funny drive by Los Al the other day. I'd always heard there was a racetrack there, but I'm not a gambling or horse racing kind of guy. Uh, but all of a sudden I looked up and like there it was. Like, how could I miss this thing? But anyway, miss it. I did. I will not miss it any longer. But going back to Chris for a second, uh, I see he's just the latest candidate that is a man of his word. He's an honorable guy, and shouldn't that be like the bare minimum we accept? Is just some sort of a decent human being as a leader? Is that too much to ask for? And I mean, apparently for some people it is. I had coffee with a friend of mine this morning who still think Trump's a better economics guy. And this is after I handed him the 4 pages of bankruptcies and all that. Uh, I think what it comes down to is for some people, and I can't imagine the personality type this must reflect, but there's must be this personality type that really likes, that sort of uh, authoritarian bully. I can't imagine. I mean, I can see people selling out for money. People do that all the time. But this is a little different. This is like selling out your soul or something. And that's why I think that if you use true decency as a starting point, more often than not, you'll wind up voting Democrat. I mean, it's just you know Trump alone added almost $4 trillion to the deficit. I mean, that's like 10% on his own, and you guys are happy with it. And the reason you guys are happy with it is 'cause you're probably going to die soon, and everybody else's kids have to pay for it. I mean, what did we leave them? $40 trillion in debt, and like I said, one guy's responsible for 10% of it, and the guy's a criminal at that. And then, I mean, I just don't think it's too much to ask for to have someone who's like, not got any criminal tendencies. Would that be asking too much? I can't imagine, but yeah. So guys, don't be so quick to paint all candidates with a broad brush about being just criminals and deceiters and liars and all that. And the real problem is we never had a real one of those until we got Trump, and then we got like super liar. We might have gotten the occasional political campaign, whatever it is, but you would never get the kind of blatant falsehoods and lies that come uh, that come out of the White House these days. And the stuff that does come out is like propaganda. Yeah, what is so? Why won't they tell us what the war costs? Why won't they tell us what they're spending? I mean, didn't Trump just order something else? Besides the 250 Escalades and the fleet of boats in from Finland, the ice boats, ice cutters, what do you call them, icebreakers? Didn't he just do something else? And how about those guys jumping off the aircraft carrier in the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, have we not lost every bit of order? And, it's not, don't forget, it's not like order is Trump's selling point. Chaos is his selling point. And guess what, guys? You voted for chaos and we got it. It's bad enough to have them in there, but to, deny help to Democrat states is just, it's just too base. It debases and demeans and degrades everything and everybody. And that's why Trump loves it. He's got that just pathetic, sick personality. And I when I was chatting with Chris Duncan yesterday, and by the way, that's votechrisduncan.com if you can at all help. He deserves it. If you want a decent guy, I would tell you and move on. But I thought he was an extremely decent guy. He's got a little a government experience in that he was a mayor down there in San Clemente, and he what else? He was a federal prosecutor, so he's got some idea of like truth. Imagine that, somebody that has an idea of what truth is. And again, is that too much to ask for? Well, it kind of depends, doesn't it? And you know what we need to do? We need to launch the old Zoiper 5 so we can give out the phone number. Oh, okay, here we are. So, guys, if anyone wants to call in and vent, how about it? 949-629-3820. If I said this, I call it the Democracy Radio Network for a reason. And we are a pro-Democrat platform exclusively built to help Democrats get elected. Uh, we showcase them in the best light available, and then we let you make your decision. But if they're on the Democracy Radio Network, you can rest assured that they've been somewhat vetted. And after the interview, if we're proud to endorse them, we'll say so. If not, we just won't say anything at all. But to a T, every person that we've chatted with has just been, like I say, a person of integrity. I just can't seem to emphasize that enough. And I was telling Chris that one of the things I do when I start off the program in the last couple of weeks is I start off with a premise for Republicans, and the premise is, and like I say, this is Abby Kaufman, so I'm going to be as nice about this as I can possibly be. But I think President Trump, and by extension, some Republicans have a credibility problem. It always cracks me up on that. A credibility problem. I think that's like really nice for like lying. And like I say, why can't we find out what the war costs? Why can't we find out what they're spending? And when somebody hides information, it usually ain't too favorable for them, if you know what I mean. And you can just, and I think there's a judicial rule like that if somebody doesn't recall a document or something, that they can substitute the evidence somehow. What is that rule? I'll think about it and let you know. But is it just too much to ask for? And I mean, when people say, "Well, I'm not voting for a saint for president," well, that's not the point, you idiot. The point is, you need to. We don't need every president to be as religious and with the religious convictions of Jimmy Carter. Hey, Joe Biden, I went to church every week. I didn't have I was glad to see that. To me, that just shows decency, as opposed to when Trump marches across to Lafayette square across from the White House, near the church, and holds the Bible upside down. Now, I think that ought to be like two contrasting pictures, as Trump hold the Bible upside down, and Joe Biden and his wife go to like the National Cathedral. And and he went every week. It's not like he just did this for show. So anyway, the importance of credibility and not having it. Uh, in all seriousness, if Trump says anything, how in the world does anybody assume that has some degree of truth in it? I mean, just because he says it, it could have absolutely no resemblance to reality. And when somebody's existence doesn't resemble reality, I think we have a problem. And another problem and this one just kind of hit me the other day, is he's got that Natalie Harper woman, the human printer that always prints out nice, positive articles about him. Whenever she's with him, that's allegedly why she's with him, is to provide him these sorts of uplifting articles in the face of all the vast media hoaxes and conspiracies to do nothing but destroy President Trump. I mean, you've heard it all a gajillion times. And see, the problem is with these guys, or one of the problems, is that whenever a problem comes up, it's automatically a national emergency, a national security emergency. And the truth of the matter is they're not. They're not. If they were national, I tell you what a national security emergency is. A national security emergency is Donald Trump asking for a master list of U.S. spies and getting it. That's, I mean, and then of course that opens the question of, well, why did King Donald want the list? And again, I have no idea. I can't begin to read what's in that, dinosaur pea brain of his. And that's the deal with the dinosaurs, right? That's why it took him like, I don't know, a day and a half after the brain says, wag the tail, that the nerve impulse actually gets transmitted down to the tail. So, and that was because they had like a really small brain, and the nerve thing had a long way to travel. But see, Trump's going to be devoid of all that. But yeah, and I begged Chris, as a federal prosecutor, I had asked Chris, I said, one thing I bring up far too often, I'm sure for you guys, is, wasn't January 6th enough? Wasn't that enough to disqualify somebody from being president? And you can only assume that between the constant, what do they call it? Fill the airwaves or whatever it is. And they just do lousy, stupid stuff every day, and eventually it's just another stupid thing. And please, God, tell me. I think we need to start a GoFundMe page, and the reason I think we need this is I think we need to buy like John Cornyn and Bill Cassidy and whoever else. I think we need to buy them like a spine or a model of a spine so they know what it looks like. That's what they really, because they wouldn't benefit from a spine. They just need to know how spineless they are. And deep down, I do think they know. I don't. I can't imagine what went on behind those closed doors. But to get those two or three to vote for Todd Blanche's to advance his nomination to the full Senate was just huge. And another thing, I'll tell you a little something about J.D. Vance. Actually, I'll go ahead and tell you now. Did you know that Ukraine stopped bombing Russian tankers after, get this, after JD, or as I call him, Shady, get it, Shady Vance asked them to please don't do that. Now, this this obviously kind of helps Russia. Well, they get to keep the lights on a little longer, and Ukraine's done just such a great job of taking out the refineries that Russia's hurting, and they're led by a guy who doesn't recognize it. And if he does recognize it, he just it kind of plods on. And this the handling of the Ukraine war, the Ukraine invasion. I mean, let's call it what it is. Uh, it is that I think Putin like Trump are finally learning the limits of force. And in Putin's case, he's just running out of sheer manpower. I mean, that's he was. There was a thing about the security service going to the department stores in Russia and finding out who's like in a lot of debt, and then just so happening to make them an offer that, we can make this debt go away if you don't mind going to the Russian front. You won't be there long, but or, parts of you may be there longer than other parts. But how's that sound for a deal? You walk free, and we let you go to the Russian front, where the guns may or may not jam. But like I say, regardless, it won't matter because some Ukraine drone will take you right out. And it's funny. On Instagram, I saw a thing for, I guess, an event of some sort called a Taste of Bosnia, and I just could not help but wonder what a taste of Bosnia would be like. And don't forget World War One now. The Archduke of Serbia, Franz Ferdinand, assassinated someplace, or was it somebody assassinated? And that's how World War One started. So, it wasn't a very big deal. So you can certainly assume that Trump may have planted the seed. Or no, that's not what he's done. He's burning the timber. Or no, the timber. What do they call it? The kindling. He's burning the kindling wood in order to facilitate the huge establishment that's coming. The huge, not establishment, but the huge negative events that have got to occur based on his economic policies. And another thing, aren't we spending much more than we take in just quarterly? I mean, the guy's just, Biden's insane. Biden runs dead. Biden, whatever Joe Biden is accused of, is exactly what Trump carries out in person. I mean, he's just, he's been trained by Roy Cohn such that whatever the offense is, no, you're the one. I'm not it. You're it. And that automatically throws somebody on the defensive. And there, and so, that's not where you want. You want to be on offense. You don't want to be on defense. And don't forget Trump's defenses are a little limited. It's not like he's got some shrewd people maybe, but pretty boy Pistol Pete Hegseth ain't one of them. I just don't think that in I don't know, Annapolis or West Point or Groton, Connecticut, or Aurora, Colorado, where any of the armed forces campuses are, I think they probably taught a little bit something about war management and the importance of like missiles and rockets and supplies, and how if you go to war, it'd be kind of nice to make sure you had a boatload of everything. So, and why is that important? Because if not, you do what an idiot like Trump does. You burn up 80% of the patriots on $30,000 drones, and now the world knows we don't have any weapons or none of those weapons. We may have others, but we ain't got those, and that means, and you know what that means? That means no air defense for almost everybody else, and that's what those Patriots are. Tomahawk's a little more offensive, but the Patriots are designed to be interceptors. So you can, the Ukraine's going to be I think it already is just a huge bloody mess. I have, the destruction is horrible. And the truth of the matter is, if you look around the world where Trump has touched anything, it's more likely than not that it's in flames or tatters or something. I mean, weren't we better off before the war? I keep asking. Hang on, guys. We can take a little bite here. Sorry about that. I was starving. So yeah, weren't we like slightly better off before? Kind of seems that way to me. And has President Trump tried to, if this is his idea of winning, I think we really need a new captain. And I say, Pretty Boy Pistol Pete Cakes have fires top military people, Joint Chiefs, caliber stuff, during war. He fired a lot of them before the war, and then he kept firing them. And why you would, that's like a baseball team trading their best player when they're getting ready to go to the World Series. Usually those kind of things just don't happen. If they do happen, somebody's kind of stupid. And geez, would I be anywhere near correct if I were to say that I don't think Trump's compadres are like mental material? I mean, it's just one laughing stock after another. Like I said, the good news is with everything else going on, you don't think about Keystone Cop Cash Patel, whose qualifying experience for the to be the director of the FBI as to have made a second-rate film filled with like innuendo and presented as truth. I think that was like 2,000 Mules or something. And of course, that mule is a derogatory term for an ethnic group we don't need to go into. But anyway, so what do you guys think? And, we're dying to hear, and the number's 949-629-3820. So if the mood strikes you, give us a call and vent for a little bit. And I got to tell you, a few things were so weird today. But there was one of the headlines, the front page New York Times was, and I quote, "Gringos hit fishing boat off Ecuador." Now it didn't say like kind of just said gringos, and I mean my best recollection is that's the white devils from North America, and of course the who done it? The U.S. says we didn't do it, and we know those guys wasn't lying, don't we? So what are they going to do? I mean, it's just who's blowing these people up. Now, if you were a thinking person, you might ask, well, who else do I know that has done something similar? And you might think, geez, that kind of sounds like what Donald Trump was doing when he was blowing those fishermen out of the water. Now, just and they admitted that they admitted the war crime of killing innocent people. I mean, everybody deserves to be like proven guilty to some degree, don't they? And but just to assume, and let's say even, and I mean, it's not like he's come forward with intelligence and said, "Oh, we knew that this boat was carrying, it was manned by such and such." And for all we know, it could have been. What if it was a decoy for another one? In that case, we really killed innocent people. And I'm sure Trump has the American record for this, killing innocent people. I mean, I don't know how many tens of thousands must have died in Iran, not counting the 5,000 the clergy slaughtered for protesting. Uh, but again, I just want to have one address from the Oval Office explaining exactly how we're winning. And then he can go into other tales because again you won't get a straight answer from the guy. But hang on, let me swallow this. But see, I'm like the worst kind of guy with this because I'm like the NASCAR guy that goes to the Daytona 500 or Talladega, and then went on the speedway Daytona, and I'm one of the guys that would go to see like the big wreck at the end. And that's kind of why I watch Trump's speeches or listen to Trump's speeches, is because I kind of want to know. But I have this little internal wager I make with myself. And the wager is usually how long can he go before he goes off script? And, usually I'll give him like, 8 to 10 minutes or so but I think he's getting a little sloppy, a little. Those arteries are starting to harden a little too much in the brain because he doesn't. It just I could give him more time. It just wouldn't help. And since he is, and doesn't everybody know that Donald Trump is like the smartest guy around? In any room, he's the smartest guy. You don't have to worry about anybody taking advantage of old Donald Trump, do you? As we give him a fake peace prize and a golden calf and whatever else it is. That's what he ought to get. Somebody ought to give him like the golden calf. That was some Bible thing. I think about the Jews worshiping a golden calf instead of like God Almighty. And things didn't work out really well after that. But the golden calf, I mean, I think he kind of liked that. Uh, you know, uh, who in the world that tapes gold stuff to his office walls that just so have to be the White House? I mean, it's just insanity. And another thing, did you guys hear about how insulted Trump was when a court ordered him to stop the East Wing shelter, whatever you want to call it, ballroom, and told him to stop it and reminded him, get this, that he was merely a tenant and tenants don't get the rights to do those kind of things. And oh my God, the tweet or post after that was just a riot. I'm the president of the United States. I'm not a tenant. Oh, pal, I hate to tell you, that's what you are. The trouble is he's not smart enough to know when he's losing an argument. And there was a relatively famous photographer from New York. Her name was Fran Lebowitz. And Fran said something the other day that was just a riot. And, she is a typical New Yorker, so keep that in mind. But she says something like, the scarier part about Trump is that he's so stupid. She says, you don't know anybody as stupid as Donald Trump. You just don't. I mean, we've all got a pretty wide circle of friends, and certainly everybody's got some like stupid friend about him. And imagine that he's so stupid, you don't know how stupid he is. Makes me feel good to have that guy on the most powerful guy in the world, isn't it? If there was ever a need for a steady hand, he's got it. Oh, Jesus. The only thing Trump does steadily is lose money and or spend other people's money. I think that's about the sum total of his economic gifts. And another thing, wouldn't everybody really like to know the deal with Wharton? He ain't been talking about much lately. I kind of wonder why. Is because and how about the all the hair problems? Now I don't know that, but you know what? I bet that somehow or other, Donald Trump's hair or hairpiece problems are national security related. I bet somebody's trying to blow his hair off his head so they'll make it easier to spy at what's going on. So yeah, it is a national emergency that Trump's toupee or graph or what. I mean, well, by the way, does anybody know exactly what he does, what he has? I mean, he always looks so weird to me, and I do take some comfort looking at Trump with his windblown hair and bald spots and all that, and then you got next to the incredibly coiffed. I love that word, coiffed. Shady Vance. It's gonna be a really hard time to say JD after this. But yeah, I think he's more of a shady Vance. Doesn't everybody else? I mean, I don't have to go too far out on a limb with this, do I? And you know, and I got to tell you, another thing that's going on that is just election uh, worthy mentioning is that Trump has ordered the hunt be intensified for non-citizens on the voting rolls, and of course, this is his way of pushing deportations. Uh, but what it really is, he's trying to give cover to his lie. He's trying to show that there's an effort to uh, uh, that he's in, let me put this another way. As Trump keeps claiming fraud and fuel for the fire and all this, the truth of the matter is there are no claims of rampant election fraud. There's no claim, there's no fraud, there's no nothing. And please, God, keep in mind, we didn't even know really what to call this until it started to be called the big lie. And think about what that thing has done. And isn't that enough to disqualify a guy? The big lie perpetrated on the American people? And you guys like this? For the life of me, I just I don't know what part of civics or growing up you kind of missed, but seems as though you guys really missed something. I said there's no election fraud, and this is my time when I say my delusional dumbass and dumbassistan story. I always run into a guy at the grocery store, and he used to belong to my old gym, and he's an election denier. And he asked me if I'd ever come around to believing that the election was rigged. I'm like, Gary, not only are you delusional, but you're a delusional dumbass, and you're a delusional dumbass that I'll get shipped to dumbassistan. You guys had 60 different chances to prove it. You just don't have any evidence. You haven't had any evidence. You've gotten thrown out of court 60 times. Well, there's always 61. Like, no. At some point, a judge is just going to shut you down. Judicial economy, judicial resources are fairly expensive, and we're not going to give it to you to rack up frivolous claims. Matter of fact, it's really nice. Some of the judges have started to sanction Trump attorneys, especially the ones in the DOJ. And it's not like they give them a choice. When the court hands down an order, according to the separation of powers, it's acted on. And you never had a president or cabinet staff. They might just say, well, we may just have to say F the courts and do what we want. Like, what? Is that not the coup takeover language? So, guys, in case you can't, in case you haven't noticed this, I am incredibly apprehensive about November, not necessarily for turnout, but for something internal. Like, what if Trump replaces the House of Representatives clerk of court, whose duty it is to ascertain, to get the individual rolls from the states and prepare his list that then goes to whoever vice president, like when Pence was counting on January 6th. I mean, how God do you do that? So, I say, please, guys, take this slightly more seriously. And I say, not only turn out to vote, but we've got to make some sort of an impression that if anything goes wrong, there's going to be hell to pay. Because Trump's just going to do what he usually does. And, whatever time it'll be, oops, look at that election fraud. I'm taking over. And the courts are going to go, huh? And I can only assume that the Democrats are going to have judges and all that just like right on hand to, put a stop to this ASAP, because it cannot, without evidence, there just can't be. And there has been no evidence. And if there is election fraud, I think it's going to be people voting for, I mean, the guy's just delusional. I see that's why he's a dumbass, because he does the same stuff after 60 times being told no. And I mean, what do you say? And by the way, if you do have anything to say, give us a call at 949-629-3820 and let old Uncle Ab know what's going on in your world. Because I think it's like 81 days until November 2nd. And I'm going to say the lead up to it is just so incredibly tense. And I can only ask you to hang with us, every day. We're here for you Monday through Friday, noon until my voice goes, which is usually around 1 these days. I thought I could make it till 2, but it's just my voice just goes. It's funny when a quiet person all of a sudden has to host a radio show. But I do it well, and I do it for you. So let's go on. And all the fires and all that's not lost on you, right? Europe as now this is August the 13th, and Europe has already had 5 heat waves. Can you imagine how many people died? I mean, it's not like over here where everybody's got air conditioning. It might be like Al Bundy on Married with Children. If I remember when Chicago had that heat wave, and Al's idea was to move the family into the frozen food section of the grocery store. Check it out. It's and it'll remind you of how nice a grocery store is in the middle of a drought or a heat wave. And where's Linda Ron's out with the old heat wave burning in my heart? Okay. Well, anyway, I'm sure Linda's just kind of rocking out in her own special way. And of course, the 2026 El Nino is going to be huge. And I mean, it could change the world. God alone, after it's been so hot, so dry, to have any sort of rain is usually just devastating in California. And the joke would be, why did you build on the slope? And the answer would be, so I could slide into a better piece of property. But that's not really funny anymore. Any given house here would take, and the house doesn't take much to replace, as far as material or even labor. It's just the damn land you had to put it on. It is amazing to me. You cannot imagine how many banks or lending institutions must hold mortgages in California. Now, Newport Beach is funny. Newport Beach is the exception because in Newport Beach, I think 50% of the homes do not have mortgages. So that means people paid for them or they paid them off for whatever it is, but they paid it. Uh, so yeah, I mean, my friend lives in a condo across the street from the pavilions on Bayside Drive, and he bought it, $1 million a couple of years ago, and now it's like $2 million. And my thought was, well, shouldn't your like liability premiums double? Also, since insurance companies are now on the hook for a $2 million rebuild instead of a $1 million rebuild. And I mean, I don't know why they don't do that. I'm sure the insurance commissioner has some say in this. But I mean, if you get the advantage of the appreciation, and for instance, you can use it as a home equity line of credit or whatever, then I just think that's extremely fair to have the. And if insurance companies don't have the money to build back, then we're all screwed. And I think that's largely the case in the Palisades. What I don't, and maybe it's going on, I don't know about it, but I had always thought that when time was of the essence, and the Palisades fire was like a year ago. Uh, so you would think that after people losing their homes, they'd want another shelter as soon as possible. Now I know there's some environmental problems with the soil where the houses burned, and I wouldn't want anybody to get some sort of life altering and gene altering disease from any sort of radioactivity that might be there or any sort of pollution. But let's assume that's not the case. Let's assume that everything burned and everything's ready to be rebuilt. But it seems to me as though a really good answer to this would be a lot of those modular prefab homes. And I mean, they're nice. I don't see any difference between that and a architect designed or architect drawn plans for a house. Uh, and not to mention that, but everything is just so much quicker. I don't know, but I would imagine you could be into a prefab place within 6 months, as opposed to Southern California, where it takes a year to get the building permit and then another year to build the house. If you're lucky and nothing goes wrong. And then don't forget, there's always a quality issue. I see so many contractors rebuilding so many really expensive houses that they just can't all be qualified to do this. So, they're carpenters and they're carpenters. And I say these things cost a boatload of money. But my point is they make these, artistic prefab things. And like I say, if you want to wait a couple of years, then you're more than welcome to take your time. But I think the city should green light this sort of thing and maybe actively encourage it. have a I don't know if you can. There's a market that opened in the Palisades. Give some sort of flyer away. I don't know. Get people looking at this stuff. Hopefully, if they're shopping at the Palisades, they're living in the Palisades. But I still think these prefab houses, they should be easier to for the building inspector to inspect. The buyer should really like it because it's kind of a fixed deal. It's like the dinner menu that's fixed. We'll put this house here, and anything comes up later, let us know. Yeah. Now, just deep down under it all, I always hate when houses are built on concrete slabs. That is such, it's a shortcut that winds up costing the owner a fortune. And I don't see anything wrong with the old fashioned beams and joists and all that. And let's make sure things are like bolted down. This whole concrete slab thing, for a plumber to have to do anything, it takes a what do they call those things? A jackhammer to break up the concrete. So I just and maybe I'm sure there'll be less few or not less, but fewer trees in the Palisades. But I sure would like to see it come back as same thing for Malibu, and you can extend this wherever you like. Now, I don't think this is the time or place for a one of those tiny house things, but there's some really nice prefab things that you can have shelter fairly quickly. And sometimes I usually hate doing things for speed if for no other reason, but shelter is something that everybody really needs and should have. And it gets people out of whatever temporary situation they were in, whether it's renting or moving in with friends or relatives, or even, God forbid, having to leave the state. Uh, so, like I said, with that in mind, it is time to at least consider that. Uh, okay. Oh, and how about this? El Sayed one in Michigan, right? And what people don't understand, or maybe they do, is because there's no real residency requirement to be a U.S. citizen, you can become a U.S. citizen without any sense of history. You may have taken a citizenship test and know a few facts, but you have to know it and understand it to be able to explain it perfectly. And when El Sayed, I think it was El Sayed, said something about fireworks should and let's ban fireworks. Nobody's arguing fireworks aren't stupid. I'll be the first one to admit that. But you see, in that case, he doesn't make the connection between the fireworks and the battle that night. You know, our flag was still there. Oh, say it's our star spangled. You so while he may have known the words, he doesn't necessarily see the historical connection when the skies light up like like a war, and like, let's say, at least a war back then. Uh, uh, oh god, sorry about that. I don't know why this is kicking up like this, but so I have to sneeze at you like this, but believe me, I only do it if I have to. And you know what? If somebody gives us a call at 949-629-3820, I won't have to sneeze in front of you or into the microphone. How much better could that make your Thursday? And so, yeah, think about the historical connection between the fireworks and the rockets' red glare and all that, and the rockets' red glare. And I was kind of like that. Uh, and for 4th of July, I did 2 videos. I did Yankee Doodle, and I did the Star Spangled Banner guitar solos, of course, or solo guitar. I did not guitar solos, but solo guitar, and so good it made me want to sing along. So I hope you guys enjoyed it in some way. Uh, but now, so that's Michigan. Let's talk about Wisconsin, and where the DSA Francesca Hong got beat by a bureaucrat who had taken his name off the ballot. And I there are some parts of the Democratic Socialists of America, some things that platform that I don't have a problem with. Other things I do, uh, but they it's clearly the start of a movement. Let's see whether it's sustained. I think this election is so crucial that we need as few controversial candidates as possible, which made me really happy when Graham Plattner decided to get on the bus and get out of town. Uh, some things are just bad, and child abuse, sexual abuse in the public. I don't. There may be people that will vote for you, but I sure won't. I mean, I consider that like a really bad character flaw. I mean, trust me, there's like no excuse to hit your wife or abuse your wife, and I just and you clearly don't have the you're clearly not a right thinking person. Because everybody is ought to be kind of slow to anger. And if somebody has a hair trigger or hair trigger temper, I think that's just an obvious red flag that something's like wrong. Uh, So that's why I think Max Mellon in Ohio really does. Even though he's Republican, he can stay in and get creamed. I don't really care, other than I just like to see decent candidates, truthful candidates. And if you want a decent, truthful candidate, then I suggest you start looking at the Democratic ticket wherever you are and vote, vote, vote. And the truth of the matter is, guys, short of doing it on the internet, it's not going to get any easier than this. I mean, they mail it to you. All you got to do is mail it back or drop it off, even. Now, I first want to admit there are a lot of potential foul ups. Like, what if you had a drink or so when you filled it out and another drink or two when you sent it? Would those signatures actually match? Well, it kind of depends on the drinky winky quantity, doesn't it? At least it would for me. Uh, and let's see what else we got going on. Oh, and how about this? Doesn't the Shady Vance thing just amaze you with Ukraine? I mean, what's he doing? Helping Russia. And Shady didn't think of this on his own. Somebody had to tell him to do it. So, the how and the why, we only know that there's a benefit being given to whom? The Russians. And, again, you can't be surprised. I mean, Trump takes their side regularly in any given dispute. But then again, what side the liar takes is it's kind of a joke by itself, and and the only way that sorry guys, before I did have that Natalie Harp thought again, and I hate to change subjects so erratically, but time and my voice is starting to run out, and I wanted to preach this one more time. And that is Natalie Harp, the human printer, has a job. Her job is to follow the president around with a portable printer. And I'm not sure if this is just on demand or if this is, like she'll just scroll around. And God only knows the places she scrolls around to get these positive articles about Trump. But anyway, so she gets these things. And in one form or another, in one sequence or another, she shares them with Trump to make him feel better or feed his ego, whatever you want to say. Now, I can't help but feel that the sources of this information are somewhat questionable if you did some real digging. So, and like I said, so let's take that step. Let's assume that the sources she finds and the article she quotes, let's just say they're not the most reputable people. You could say they may even have a credibility problem, but let's just say they're not totally reputable people. But they're putting out all these great stories about Trump. And so she reads them to him because the guy can't read. And I'm like, wait a minute. You are feeding false information to the president of the United States Doesn't that sound treasonous in some way? However you slice it, I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. And I appreciate the complete lack of structure, but it's just a devastating way to run a country. And I still want to know more about these guys jumping off the aircraft carrier in the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, somebody don't want to stay on the boat. Those things are big, and that's a nice long drop down. And I don't think they dropped. Well, you don't think those things just have like one level, the flight deck, and everything else just kind of sealed underneath. Uh, and those things are old, like World War II. The sleeping quarters are horrible. The kitchens are bad. I mean, uh, but you see, and we could have done a lot with that $4 trillion Trump added to the deficit. But and let me ask something: how much does that speak to your financial acumen? If you think that somebody that added $4 trillion to the debt is a financial genius, if that's being a financial genius, God Almighty, I want to do business with you? Because I have some land. Might take a couple hours till the tide goes up, but I'd really like to sell it to you. They say it's marshland, but that's only when the tide is high. When the tide's low, look how beautiful it is. You can just hear them now, can't you? Oh, guys, I shouldn't do this, but I may just have to bail on that a little even earlier than I usually do. This is I kind of need to be able to breathe a little bit here, so I am going to check. Geez, going to check out even earlier, and I'm gonna have a seat and have a little sip of warm coffee, see if that does anything. And in the meantime, you know what we do around here? We have one thing to say at this time, and we usually say it, and it starts out, Roger, roll call.